Hello, everyone. This is my first vlog episode, so I'll do my best not to babble. One question I get asked regularly is what got you into music in the first place? Why do you perform? Why are you living in a dream world, Christopher? So to answer that question, I think it has to stem back to when I was younger and just being in a family that enjoyed listening to music. My father was a big influence on my passion for music because I saw how passionate he was when he was listening to music. I remember walking downstairs when I was younger, and that's my air fryer, but don't worry about that. Walking downstairs when I was younger and just seeing him rocking out to like Pink Floyd tunes and like Jimi Hendrix tunes and having like the earphones on and his system, I used to think, man, that's so cool. Uh, Listening to music and enjoying music like that is so awesome. And I like to think that some of the things that he listened to I didn't always dig or was influenced by, but there was a lot of music that he did listen to that really I gravitated towards. A lot of it being the Beatles, a lot of it being the oldies, and a lot of cool things like that. My sister uh, was listening to hip hop when it was really popular around the time when I was just started to kind of get into listening to music in general. The first album I think I ever remember listening to was Vanilla Ice, Ice Ice Baby. Oh my gosh. What else? Um, Ice T, Original Gangster, and 12 Inches of Snow by Snow, a Toronto artist, and Onyx, Back to Fuck Up. That was an insane album. I loved that growing up. Me and my brother used to pump that all the time. And I think these were like my first musical influences, I guess you can say, as far as just listening to music and enjoying it later on in life. Um, Whether I had like a musical identity or not, I think that kind of started when I was in like grade 5 or 6, and I remember my father. Once again, he's always listening to music and he used to take us to this place called Records on Wheels in Oakville, Ontario, and a bunch of CDs and records all over the place. And my brother and I used to go with him sometimes on Sundays, and it'd be like an empty store, not too much traffic. And he used to be like, "All right, you guys get to pick out one album," and we'd hang there like the whole day, and we'd just be like checking out albums, checking out album artwork. My dad would be going to the downstairs portion of this place, and checking out records and the CDs, and my brother and I would be checking out some of the more modern alternative rock stuff of the 90s at the time. And I remember, I think the album that changed my life uh, for the better was Green Day Dookie. And I remember a buddy of mine at the time, Louis Sorelli, his sister was into Green Day, and I remember her mentioning this album and not knowing what this album would have sounded like. I remember seeing the cover and just seeing like all the dogs like tossing shit and all this crazy almost Where's Waldo type illustration that when you were young, if you saw something like that, you'd be like, "Yo, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life." And I remember grabbing this album and bringing it home. And I remember later on telling Lewis's sister that I got the Dookie album. She says, "You have to listen to the song Basket Case." So I remember just listening to Basket Case on repeat and just really loving it, and not only kind of capture my identity as like this. I love skating at the time too, so I love that style and culture, but also uh, how that kind of coincided with alternative rock, and how I liked it, like punk. I was punk in '94, and I just fell in love with that album, and fell in love with the band, and I loved the way Trey Cool was on the drums, and seeing that video and being mind blown on how quick his 16th note, 32nd note rolls or whatever on those toms, and seeing how just cool and like ridiculous Billy Joe was as such a personality, singing on these songs, and also just seeing him in the videos and seeing like this like crazy like zany guy, and really was inspired by that era of music. Weezer, but that's another story. We'll get to that in a moment. But what really started and kicked it off was Green Day. And I think it was around the grade 6 time. And I don't know, it's just something about like, I'm not sure if it's a Filipino thing. I'm not sure if it's a daydream thing, but I just felt like I've always wanted to be a performer. I always loved getting up in front of people, and I feel like the best always came out of me um, when I was performing. And not in a way of like, well, look at me, everyone, but just, I know I love the vulnerability of it. I love the nervousness of it, of that feeling that it gives you in the pit of your stomach when you get in front of people. And it's a feeling that I've been chasing all the way to the present time. And I remember when I was in grade 6, for whatever reason, I asked my teacher, Miss Farniash at the time, if I could do a lip sync show in front of the class, because prior to that, uh, when I was in grade 5, I remember seeing the lip sync talent show at my school, and I remember sitting in the crowd, and I remember just getting blown away by just simply, the older students, like grade 7 and 8. You can only participate in the lip sync talent show when you're in grade 7 and 8. And I remember seeing, I think more or less one of my buddy, like who was in my class, his name was Luca Lombardi, his older brother Idolo. He had this long hair, and everyone else had these like cardboard cutout like guitars, and he was the only one that had like an electric guitar, and I think he was like rocking out some like Pearl Jam or something. And I remember him having this long hair, and he's like rocking out, and like the crowd was going mental, and I was just like, I want to do that. I want to be that guy. And for whatever reason, afterwards, I couldn't participate in the lip sync talent shows in front of the schools, but I remember asking my teacher, who was very supportive at the time, Miss Farney. Actually, she was such a sweetheart, and very encouraging. She was very encouraging of like writing as well. I like to do a lot of writing, poetry, because I remember seeing a poem that my dad wrote on a slab of lumber. And he wrote something for my mom, and I thought, this is how we express ourselves. This is how we tell people we really care about them. And not only was she, but also I used to like writing horror stories when I know it was a big switch, horror stories when I was that age, because of like Tales from the Crypt and Are You Afraid of the Dark and cool like shows like that I used to like watching growing up. And for whatever reason, my teacher was so sweet and said, yes, you can randomly perform in front of the class these songs you want to sing. So I remember getting my good friend at the time, Romeltai, and Greg, and we had a trio. Greg was my right-hand man, Romel was my drummer, and we'd set up the chairs, and we set them up in front of the class. And I remember being like so nervous, and the first songs that I sang was Basket Case and Pulling Teeth. Pulling Teeth became my second favorite song on the album because I'd rewind past Basket Case after I was done listening to it, and I'd be hearing like the tail end, or sometimes, all the way to the beginning of Pulling Teeth, which was right before Basket Case. So learning the lyrics to that and learning lyrics to Basket Case, and I remember setting up my band, getting up on the front in front of the classroom, and getting my sweater and tying around my waist and looking like Kurt Cobain, all grunged out. And I remember the first performance I did, quote unquote lip sync performance I did in front of the class. I remember I just wanted to do it so bad. I remember just looking down at the ground the whole time while I was singing and playing. And from there, I got addicted to this feeling of performing in front of people. And then slowly but surely, my head kept on going up, 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 where I can just start looking at people in the class and rocking out, because I got so much more comfortable with performing in front of people, and just being in front of people, which I think was an amazing, I guess, how can I describe it? An amazing experience that helped me through many different walks of my life. Being outgoing when I felt comfortable, and being in that position really, really helped. So it started from there, and then from there, teachers caught wind that I was doing this in Miss Farniash's class. Then they started doing it in their class, which is really cool, because now I felt like maybe I sparked something. And then me and my band would go from portable to portable, doing the portable tour, lip singing in front of some of these different classes. And that was so cool. Like who can like foster like that from from their students so much. And that's why I got to give so much credit to my teacher, Miss Farniash at the time, for just being so sweet and so encouraging at the time when she didn't need to be, but she did. And it spawned something that made me really enjoy my life. So that kind of started in elementary school. And then at the end of like grade 6, we couldn't do the lip sync talent show of 7 and 8. So I don't know how this happened. All of like the grade 6 classes just went, and I think that like I threw a ripple effect in there or something, where we all did this like our own grade 6 like talent show. And I remember singing Christy Road by Green Day. I've evolved. My musical tastes have evolved. I ended up going into the Kerplunk album, and singing Christy Road, where we sat down, was like that intro. And I remember getting up when it started rocking out. I remember headbanging so hard, like I mean so hard for so long, that whole song. And I never headbanged that hard in my life. I think I seriously suffered a mild concussion. I'm not even like lying. Like the next day my neck was like destroyed, and like I had the worst headache. So I think like my brain was thrashing around like my skull that day. It was crazy, and definitely one of the biggest highlights of my elementary school experience. And then eventually went on to doing the talent shows in grade 7 and 8. I remember doing Say It Ain't So by Weezer. I remember doing backing up doing Just a Girl with my friend Agatha at the time, and just love these experiences. It was amazing. I remember I wanted to do Zero by Smashing Pumpkins, but the teacher at the time who was like doing the auditions was like, you can't do that song because it says God is empty, just like me. And going to a Catholic school saying God is empty is a no-go. So that was awesome, and I loved that experience growing up in elementary school. Fast forwarding to high school, I would want to do the talent shows. Whenever there was like a talent show or something like that, I wanted to do it. And by this time, I was playing drums. In grade 7, I picked up my first set of drums, and I remember it was hard to get them. I had to bang on pots and pans for quite a while before my dad finally was just like, maybe I should get him a set of drums. So I remember getting a nice white pair of Westbury with some Sabian cymbals and just jamming along. And I never took any formal lessons. I just listened to a lot of Weezer, the Blue Album, and Green Day, Dookie. And that was really like the kind of the foundation of just keeping time and playing drums. And I remember doing Hitchin' a Ride by Green Day in grade 9, and where I played the drums and I was singing. And it's so crazy because I don't know why I never considered myself a singer. I just sang. I don't know. It just came out. I thought to myself, I'm going to be a singer. I just sang. And maybe that was like kind of this blissful ignorance that I had. And I'll get to another story about that later on, where I started to believe in myself as a singer. But I remember doing these talent shows and just performing on the drums and singing. And I remember some Foo Fighters songs, a lot of Green Day songs. And then one night changed my life as well, or when it came down to performing and dancing, where I remember just these break dancers came from like a different school and also our own school, and our resident superstar at school was a guy named Tommy Flair. And a guy that I went to elementary school growing up with, that was my brother's age. My brother's 1 year older than me. His name was Charles Gabwat. And these guys were like my idols when it came to breakdancing, because I just loved the attention that they got when I just saw it and I witnessed it. And I was like, whoa, it was amazing. And just also just the sheer skill and style of just seeing these guys dance. And that's when I kind of started kind of developing more into like rock, and my taste of it, like hip hop as well. Late 90s, early 2000s hip hop I love. And just seeing that from a performer aspect, dancing kind of was like a 50-50 passion for me, as well as music in high school growing up. And I just loved it. I loved performing. I loved getting in front of the crowds and doing it. And I remember our chaplain at the time, Mr. Finnemore, he was always encouraging of me dancing. And by this time, I was a little older, and all of my idols kind of moved on from high school, and I was like kind of the older guy, and kind of like dancing with like a lot of the younger, like, guys that kind of looked up to me, I guess you can say, at the time. And we all kind of pushed each other, and it was great. And whenever there was ever some kind of like performance assembly or something, I was always called upon to go and dance, and that was a great encouragement. And it's just such a like, just to attest of like people, really encouraging you, and what they do for you. And Mr. Finmore was definitely one of those people in my life. And later on, this is another story, I guess you can say, that really kind of made me feel like I became a singer, which was there was a talent show going on, and my friend Jackie Rhoda and Paul Zuschlag were singing The Tale of New York, I believe, by, what was the name of that band again? Is it Me First and the, not Me First and the Gimme Gimmes? Oh, I'm drawing a blank. But anywho, I played drums for it. They wanted me to play drums for it. My buddy Gary, my buddy Christian were playing guitar and bass. And I don't know, I was getting some hate from a dude of one of the rival bands, I guess you can say. And I'm not going to say his name in case he sees this, but he was just kind of hating on me. He's just being like, oh, he saw me drumming. He's like, oh, I'm such a better drummer than you. I'm like, I don't care how good of a drummer you are. I do my thing. You know what I mean? And I heard that he didn't feel comfortable singing and playing drums. So fast forward to this audition where we did The Tale of New York. And right when we were done playing this one song, Jackie and Paul were done singing, my drama teacher at the time, who was holding the auditions, Mr. Quenville, who was another big influence in my life and such a cool dude whenever I was at his class. The guy used to give me like Lex Luger like torture racks in front of the class and stuff. It was just like we used to pretend like we were fake fighting. He was such a cool dude. And he was my drama teacher. And we were in the drama room, and he's like, you guys gonna play another song? And I looked over at the rest of the guys in my band, other than like Paul and Jackie stepped off. And I was like, guys, you know how to sing When I Come Around? You guys know how to play When I Come Around? And they're like, yeah, of course you know When I Come Around. So I remember just being, okay, give me the mic and I'll just sing the song and I'll play it. Not even thinking as a singer, not just like I said, just grabbing this thing and just singing. Blissful ignorance. And I grabbed this thing and sat down and, and started going into it. Well, I heard you crying loud, and just got into it and sang it. And it was so funny because like everyone in like the drama room was so surprised, because they knew we never performed it or sang it together, because they saw us discussing this prior, and it just came out like so badass. And for whatever reason, I'm not being spiteful, I'm not being salty here. I just looked up at the guy that was like hating on me, and I just saw his like jaws drop. And I was like, and it was like this feeling of satisfaction, just like, look, we're all good at the things that we do. Don't hate. You will be surprised. You know what I mean? And you never know what people are capable of. And then I remember finishing the song, da 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 boom, and like people just like clapping and just being like, what? And I remember the look on Mr. Quenville's face, and he was just all surprised. It was like so surprised, like that. And I was like, what the heck? He's like, and after the class, he's like, Chris, man, you dance, you play the drums, and you sing. He's like, what the heck? I'm like, all right, I don't know. Like, it was just like this feeling of just like a person genuinely being interested in these things that I took for granted at the time. And I think, and maybe if I had that encouragement a little earlier on, maybe I'd be playing Wembley Stadium by now. Who knows? But it was a feeling of just like, okay, maybe I'm a singer. I don't know. And fast forward to the actual performance. It was in school, and I remember my buddy. He had a little sister who was about a year younger than me, and I had this little crush on her. And I remember her sitting side stage, and I also remember going and setting up, and we played The Tale of New York. And I remember jumping on the drums and banging the song out. It was awesome, and it went over really, really well. And then right when it came down to moving everything aside and me getting When I Come Around going on, this is the whole conclusion of, I guess you can say, part one of my story. I remember walking from my drum set, and I remember walking to the front to grab the microphone that Jackie or Paul sang on. And I kid you not, I kid you not, I remember walking right up there, and I remember grabbing onto this microphone, and all of a sudden, the crowd in this auditorium cheered so loud that my ear hurt. I've never experienced a crowd chant or like scream that loud ever since. Ever since. Maybe I'm chasing it, but ever since. And it was just this feeling of like, oh my God, like, I can't believe this is happening right now. And coupled with me grabbing this thing, having these feelings of nervous and excitement in my stomach that most performers love to chase, I grabbed this thing. I came back right to my drum throne. I looked over to the left. My crush was looking at me, smiling. Made it 10 times better. And I remember counting in. And and singing, because it was just, that song was just rolled off my tongue. It was like so easy. I've known that song since I was in grade 6, the Dookie album. And playing that and singing that was just such a life-changing moment in that moment. And it's the little moments that can become the biggest moments in your life. And that one is definitely a feeling and an experience that I guess I've been chasing ever since. So to answer that question of what got me into music as a professional performer, I'd like to think it all kind of started with that experience. And I'll elaborate on some other experiences a little later on here, but I think that's enough for now. Anywho, that's my first vlog. Thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. Chris Hummel here. I'm out.